Ladies, wake up. This God never wanted to create you. This God loves to blame you and treats you worse than it treats men. I'm just going to use a small story, and I'm going to tell you the Genesis version of it, the Enochian version of it, and the Anunnaki version of it. So hold on for all of them. So first, let's start with the Genesis version of it. The Genesis version shows right off the bat that this God never intended to create women. Now, I know many of you read the Bible, Genesis 1, Genesis 2, and think that you're reading it as it was written. But Genesis 2 was actually written prior to Genesis 1. Genesis 1 was used to give a more broader scope of what Genesis 2 is talking about. So we have to understand it that Genesis 2 was written first. So when you read Genesis 2, you would think that God created Adam and Eve, and that was his plan to create both Adam and Eve. But when you read it, what you really should recognize is the fact that this God never intended to create Eve. According to this story, God created Adam. Adam was in the garden. He brought all the animals to Adam. He told Adam the rules. First, he told Adam the rule: don't eat from this tree of knowledge of good and evil. Then he brought all the animals to Adam, and Adam named all the animals. Then he looked for which animal Adam would see and utilize as a helpmeet. Think about this for a second. Which animal would Adam choose to be his helpmeet? Sounds a little bestiality to me. But Adam couldn't find any animal that would be his helpmeet. So what did this God do? He causes Adam to go to sleep, pluck a rib from Adam, even though we have the same number of ribs that a woman have. We're not missing one. And then he creates Eve. So just in that alone, this demonstrates that this God didn't have the intentions to create Eve and thought that Adam would find a helpmeet from some of the animals, but instead realized that this is not going to work. I need something of a similar species in order to create the woman. So what does he do? He creates Eve, so that Adam now has a helpmeet of the same species to which Adam is. Now, Adam and Eve are also similar species to the angels, and I'll get to that in just a second. So then they eat from the tree of knowledge. After they eat from the tree of knowledge of good and evil, in their punishment, Adam is only punished by having to work hard for the rest of his life. He is still placed as the head of Eve, being in charge of her, but he only has to work hard for the rest of his life. Eve then is punished by having Adam as her overlord. She's punished by having to deal with pain during childbirth. She's also punished with her seed having enmity between her seed and the serpent and herself. So Eve is given way more punishments than Adam, although Adam was the one who was given the instructions, and Eve was never given the instructions as far as the tree of knowledge, that Adam had to have been the only one to explain it to her, and then she repeated it to the serpent. So although Adam is more to blame in this story than Eve was, Eve garnished more punishment than Adam. This God didn't want to create you, but was forced to create you when his original plan didn't work, which kind of makes you wonder about his knowledge of all things, his omniscience, and then decided to punish the one that didn't have as much information going into the process, right? And now women throughout time of this book and time in other cultures have had to stand under the foot of a man during their entire lifetime. Thankfully, we are wise enough to have begun recognizing that men and women deserve to have equal rights under our statutes, laws, and morality. This guy didn't believe in that. So just that little story alone, and there are plenty of more stories in the Bible where this guy don't like women, and y'all should recognize this and stop going to these churches and believing in this Bible. Now, how is this different in other societies? Where when you look at the Enochian story is where you get your war in heaven. The Enochian story is also more detailed on the angels, the sons of God, coming down and having sex with the daughters of men. And I'm combining the Enochian and the Genesis story in this version. So this is number 2. First thing we have to recognize here is that angels must be made as a similar species as man, although many Christians will say no, when they came down from their spirit form, they became in the body of men. But when you look at it, there must have only been dude angels in heaven. You never hear of a woman angel coming down. There's no feminine angels. None of the angels either choose to come down in a woman's body, or the angels are just all males. So when God first created the angels, all the angels are dudes. All the angels are males. There are no female angels. But angels, one, have the similarity of man of having lust and desire, because the angels looked upon the sons of men, the daughters of men, and found them to be beautiful, which y'all are. It's the best thing on this planet is a woman. But y'all, but the angels must have thought the same thing, like, God damn, woo-hoo, look at that one right there, and came down and had sex with these women, and they were able to produce the Nephilim. So that must mean that angels and people have the same genetic material of the same species, kind of like a lion and a tiger. They are different. One's a lion, one's a tiger, but they're both cats. And so you can breed lions and tigers. So angels are able to breed with human women. So therefore, angels must have a ping-ping. Angels must have balls. Angels produce sperm. Angels are just like people, made of the same stuff, but just has a higher level of consciousness, or a higher level of knowledge and consciousness towards this God, according to these Enoch and Genesis. But this God didn't create any female angels. Why not? Why isn't the daughters of God came down and decided to have sex with men? And then these women are being the ones who are punished more so because, oh, they started teaching the women the different technologies and different aspects of mysticism of this God, of the heavenly realm. And so that produced the Nephilim, who were originally the great men of renown, but then became evil. And in the Enochian story became evil and started consuming the human flesh. And so they had to be gotten rid of. And in the Enochian story, that was the purpose of the flood, was to get rid of the Nephilim. Whereas in the Genesis story, it was just to get rid of all people and the Nephilim. So this guy continuously shows he doesn't want women, never intended to create women. Now, when you look at the Babylonian, Sumerian version of this story, which goes for about 3,000 to 4,000 years of this story being told, so there are differences between the Sumerian version, the Akkadian or Assyrian version, and the Babylonian version. But in each one of them, we have similarities. So first, let's go all the way back to the creation of man. In the Sumerian story, Enlil, Enki, Ninhursag, and Anu agreed to create a slave race of people based on the hominid that was walking around Earth at that time frame. In order to do so, and I'm combining all four versions of the Sumerian story down to the Babylonian, they took Dumuzi, killed him, utilized his blood. In some version, Enki uses his own, but used his blood to then impregnate the cell, the egg of a woman, of the hominid, place that hominid in Ninhursag, place that egg, that fertilized egg in Ninhursag, and produced a variation of man / Anunnaki. They created 16 versions of them until they got to Adapa and Titi. Once they created Adapa and Titi, they were placed into the enclosure of Eden, or the Garden of Eden. They were not supposed to be able to reproduce. That was Enlil and Anu's prerequisite, not being able to reproduce themselves because they would come into their own consciousness. But they were able to do so, and that's why Enlil kicked them out of the garden when he found that Titi was pregnant and had Cain and Abel. Later on in the story, we see Marduk is marrying one of the humans. So the Anunnaki, because of the mixture, are able to procreate with humans. Marduk is getting married to a human. 200 of the angels of the Igigi, who are a lower caste of Anunnaki, come down and have sex and take 200 wives, have sex with them, create these half Anunnaki, half humans, and teach them all the Anunnaki technologies and mysticism. And Enlil has a problem with that, and that is one of the reasons, other than them man being too loud, that man was destroyed. But only the half Anunnaki and the full Anunnakis were able to live, because Enki is supposedly the one who got with Noah's mama and birthed out Noah, who is Atrahasis or Utnapimtim, depending upon which version of the story. But God don't like y'all. In either version, in all the histories, God don't like women. Think about it.